Hello, everyone. Welcome to Options with Doug, streaming live on Monday and Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Bookmap Discord and the Bookmap YouTube channel. Before I get started, I need to go through the disclosures. General disclosure: all Bookmap limited materials, information, and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Risk disclosure: trading futures, equities, and options involves substantial risk of loss. It is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Here's my contact information. The best way to get in touch with me is through Discord. My name on Discord is Doug P. Also in Bookmap Discord, there's an Options-Doug chat channel. You can post questions, comments, and content related to the topics of my presentation and the topics of the channel that I'll go through in just a moment. I'm also on X. My name there is @Pless. I've got a couple of announcements. First of all, Bookmap has a new verification process. This went into effect last Friday. So if you want to participate in Bookmap Discord, you do need to verify your account. Otherwise, you will not be able to see all the channels, the streaming and the chat channels in Bookmap Discord. So what you'll need to do is scan this code or go to the link shown on this on the slide here and follow the steps. You'll need to enter your email address. You'll get a code. You need to enter your code, and then you're fully verified in Bookmap Discord, and you can participate in all the streams and chat in Bookmap Discord. So everyone, please, if you're interested in Bookmap Discord, please follow this verification process. Also, the second announcement is that Bruce has posted a new supply and demand setups course. This is in the bookmap.com Learning Center. It's free to everyone. It is great content. I watched it over the weekend. I highly recommend it. Everyone, whether you trade with my approach with options or volume profile or VWAP, whatever, if you want to have a better understanding of what you're seeing in Bookmap and setups in Bookmap, I highly recommend this this course. It's a series of very short videos on different setups using supply and demand in Bookmap. Highly recommended. All right, let's get started. Here are the key tenets to my approach to trading. I believe that options trades and market maker hedging activity are key drivers of price in many stocks and futures. This is my approach to trading. And this certainly applies to the large cap tech stocks like the Magnificent Seven stocks, as well as the equity index futures like the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100. And for the S&P 500, SPX is the underlying index, SPY is the ETF version of that index, and the ES futures contract is a derivative of SPX. And when traders buy and sell puts and calls in SPX and SPY, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with ES futures. And for the Nasdaq 100, NDX is the underlying index, QQQ is the much more liquid ETF version of that index, and the NQ futures contracts is a derivative of NDX. And just like the S&P 500, when traders buy and sell puts and calls in NDX and QQQ, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with NQ futures. And certainly with the S&P 500 today, we'll see many examples of how price reacts at SPX and SPY levels. The focus of my presentation today and the focus of the Options-Doug chat channel is options order flow, the impact of options markets on stocks and futures, and the influence of market maker hedging flow on price action. I have a two-step process for trading, and the first is planning, and I use positional analysis. I look at how traders and market makers are positioned in the options market and how those positions change from day to day to develop a thesis regarding the expected trading range and volatility for the day, as well as a directional bias. And the second step in my process is execution. I look at real-time order flow in Bookmap and real-time market maker hedging flow on Spotgamma Hero to confirm my thesis and for setups. And when I talk about setups today, I will be focusing on an underlying asset. Setups in that asset can be taken with futures contracts, shares of stock, or options depending on the asset as well as the way you'd like to trade. Questions and comments are welcome, and I will be watching both the Options-Jug chat channel as well as the chat and YouTube for your questions and comments. Please feel free to post. I'll do my best to answer your questions. Here's my agenda for today, Monday, April 28th. First of all, I want to go over news items, economic data, events, and earnings reports for the week. Very big week for both economic data and earnings. Then I'll go through my positional analysis from today. Then I'll review some setups earlier today. Then I'll get to the live market. And when I get to the live market, if anyone has any stocks they want me to take a look at, please let me know and I'll be glad to do that. All right, let's get started. Again, big news with news, economic data, events, and earnings. Big week. So let's take a look at that. First of all, this is the Spotgamma dashboard home screen. Let's take a look at the events calendar first. So coming up this week, starting tomorrow, 10 a.m., JOLTS, jobs data, and also consumer confidence. Then on Wednesday, GDP data comes out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and then PCE data at 10 a.m. That's a very unusual time. I assume that's right. I don't know why it's coming out. It's normally at 8:30, but it comes out at 10 a.m. on Wednesday. And then after the market closes on, we'll get to earnings in just a moment. Let's take a look at the earnings. Let's finish up with the data. Then we'll get back to earnings. So on Thursday, ISM manufacturing PMI data comes out at 10 a.m. And then on Friday, jobs report at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. All right, so that's the data for the week. Again, big data reports, GDP, PCE data on Wednesday, manufacturing PMI on Thursday, and jobs report on Friday. All right, let's take a look at the earnings chart. So for the Mag 7 stocks report earnings, remember Tesla and Google reported earnings after the market close last week. And then beginning on Wednesday, Microsoft, wrong tool. Sorry about that. Microsoft and Meta report earnings after the market closes. Looks like there's a little bit higher expected move for Meta than Microsoft. And then Robinhood, another stock that I follow, also reports earnings after the close on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, Apple and Amazon report earnings after the market closed. So for the Mag 7 stocks report earnings this week, along with a number of other stocks, I believe around 30% of the S&P 500 stocks are reporting earnings this week. So I think this week is the largest week of earnings reports. All right, let's move on now to positional analysis. I'm going to start with the S&P 500. And this is the ES Futures and Bookmap. Note I have zoomed out all the way to the opening yesterday afternoon. I did want to point out some key levels, reactions at key levels. So before I do that, let's take a step back, look at a higher time frame. I'm going to start with SPX. I'm going to go to a 1 year, 1 day chart. And this is the April 2nd, Liberation Day, Volatility Liberation Day, and the announcement about tariffs. Then the gap down the next day. And it looks like last week SPX did break above that level, that gap level, but now is heading back down. All right, so that is a 1 year, 1 day chart. Now let's go to a 30-day, 1 hour chart. There's that Liberation Day gap down. Again, last week, Thursday, Friday. And that was right around 5,500, this level right here. SPX did break above that on Friday and now is trading back down below. That is also the volatility trigger for today. All right, so a little bit of a give back from the big rally from last week. All right, let's take a look at the levels on this chart. We'll start with the expected moves. First of all, the dashed purple lines are showing the lower and upper weekly expected move. This is based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from last Friday. Those levels remain in place for the entire week. Then the lower and upper daily expected move are shown with the dashed blue lines, also based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from last Friday again. Those levels change every day, and I do post those in Discord every day. All right, so far, SPX still trading within the both of those ranges. All right, those are the expected moves. Now let's take a look at the Spotgamma levels. These are shown with the dark red lines. These are available to Spotgamma subscribers. They're based on gamma-weighted open interest. They're available on a variety of trading platforms. Again, this is Think or Swim, a 30-day, 1-hour chart. I'm going to point out the key daily levels. First of all, the absolute gamma strike is 5,000. That's a strike with largest absolute positive and negative gamma. The next level up is the put wall. That's at 5,200. That's a strike with largest net negative gamma that can be expected to act as support. Then above that is the volatility trigger at 5,500 that I mentioned before. That is Spotgamma's proprietary volatility and gamma flip level. Below that level, like SPX is trading now, market makers' position on the gamma curve is negative. In a negative gamma environment, market makers have to trade with price dash their delta exposure. That tends to enhance or increase volatility. Above that level, like SPX traded earlier today, market makers' position on the gamma curve is positive. In a positive gamma environment, market makers have to trade against price dash their delta exposure. That tends to subdue or decrease volatility. And note, we'll take a closer look at gamma in just a minute. Gamma notional at the beginning of the day was just slightly negative and has been increasing for the past few days, becoming less and less negative. And we'll take a look at gamma in more depth in just a couple of minutes. All right, so here's the call wall, the last key daily level at 5,600. That's a strike with largest net positive gamma that can be expected to act as resistance. All right, shifts in levels. So last week on Thursday and Friday, the key daily levels were heavily influenced, especially on Friday, by this large iron condor that appeared on the trace heat map. And this was Captain Condor, as Spotgamma calls him, and his followers, placing 0 DTE, or actually they're placed as 1 DTE. Iron condors placed the day before in a large enough size to influence the key daily levels in SPX. And note today there is no large iron condor. Captain Condor is has not placed an iron condor today, so the key daily levels have shifted to more normal levels. All right, shifts in levels. So the volatility trigger shifted up, put wall shifted lower, call wall shifted higher. And for SPY, the volatility trigger also shifted higher, and the put wall shifted higher. All right, so kind of a mixed picture for shifts in levels in the SP 500, and especially for SPX, largely due to the removal of that iron condor that had an influence on the key daily levels last week. All right, let's wrap up our view of SPX. With a 1-minute chart. Then we'll get back to Bookmap. So here's SPX. Let me zoom all the way out. So this is the move that began last week. And then we'll zoom in on today. So the move began last week. Each dark shaded portion is 1 day. So let's zoom in now for the last couple of days, Friday and Monday. Uptrend broken today. So again, a little bit of a give back after the big rally last week. Key levels in play, and they're not exact, but the 0 gamma level around that level was acting as resistance. And then here's the volatility trigger. Note the break below that. That was during Bruce's webinar. And then a retest of that level from below acting as resistance. So that's key. Again, SPX broke below the volatility trigger, and then that level acted as resistance. So now SPX, and that was also a positive gamma node. So now SPX in more of a firmly negative gamma environment. So looking for larger movement now. Let's take a quick look at a SPY chart. A lot of the SPY spot gamma levels in SPY have been active today and very important. So we'll take a quick look at SPY. Resistance earlier today. Here's 3 SPY levels. 0 gamma level at 553 in the middle on a combo level up and above and below. And the 550 absolute gamma strike has been very important, acting as resistance before the cash open. That's shown by the light gray shading. And then acting as support, then resistance again. So the SPY 550 level has been very important. I have that highlighted in Bookmap. And note SPY, here's the SPY 547 volatility trigger acting as support. Then around that level, acting as resistance. And then just a few minutes ago, just as I got started, the 545 put wall acting as support. Now SPY heading back up to its volatility trigger. So watch price at that, how it reacts at that level. See if it can break above or see if it acts as resistance. All right, so back to Bookmap now again. So I'm zoomed out. We'll zoom in just a moment. Pointing out I have the SPY and SPX levels shown on this chart. There's that SPY 550 level, key level, and there's the SPX 5500 level, the volatility trigger, and then the SPY 547 volatility trigger. All right, so let's zoom in now. And again, we're looking at ES with SPX and SPY levels shown on this chart. Let me tone down the heat map just a little bit. One other thing to note, the algo that often looks like a cloud of dust around ES is not present today. So that really helps with the viewing the heat map. Makes the supply and demand that Bruce talks about it in his course much more apparent. All right, so again, I have SPX and SPY levels on this chart. I pointed out the key levels. Note there is a difference in price between a difference in price between ES and SPX. There's also a ratio between ES and SPY, and the difference, the ES to SPX difference, is 25 points today. So ES minus SPX is right around 25. And then the ES to SPY ratio about 10.078. I do post those index relationships that I'm using every day in Discord. Hello, Malik. Welcome. Glad you're here. Asked me to talk more about the gamma effect. So gamma at the basic level is a Greek, an options Greek. It is the rate of change of delta. So it's a second order Greek, second derivative, and gamma is greatest at the money at expiration, and this is where we're talking about market makers' gamma position, and this is where they may need to change their hedging at these levels of higher gamma, both the SPX and SPY levels. And there's much more to it. I suggest you go to spotgamma.com, go to the resource center, and you can read much more about it. All right, so again, ES testing the SPY 547 volatility trigger. We'll take a closer look at that in just a minute. Let's go ahead and move on to Nasdaq, then we'll get back to the S&P 500. Nasdaq, similar chart, but not many spot gamma levels in place. So this is the NQ futures and Bookmap. Let's take a quick look at the underlying index charts. Let's start with QQQ. QQQ 471.0 gamma level. And around that level has acted as support, then resistance. 470 is the absolute gamma strike. And then the QQQ volatility trigger is at 467. So QQQ is trading above its volatility trigger right now, but it has chopped around up and down around that level. Well, let's take a look at NDX. And the only level in play was this 19,500 level, large gamma 2 level, that acted as resistance around that level earlier today. All right, so back to Bookmap. All right, so there's that 19,500 level, and around that level acting as resistance. We'll talk about setups in a few minutes. And there's a white line underneath the red line. That is the QQQ volatility trigger. And then this is the NQ lower daily expected move around that level acting as support. And again, we'll talk about setups in just a few minutes. All right, let's wrap up our positional analysis by taking a look at gamma. So let's go to start off with market maker's position on the gamma curve at the beginning of the day. And this is just a reference that I look at before the cash open as I'm doing my planning. So this is market maker's position on the gamma curve at the beginning today for the S&P 500, Nasdaq, Russell 2000. Note, these numbers are mixed, and for S&P 500, SPX and SPY still negative, and positive for Nasdaq, and then negative for the Russell 2000. But all generally shifting higher over the past few days, less negative or becoming positive today for the Nasdaq. All right, let's move on to now a real-time picture of gamma. This is the trace tool. This is available to Spotgamma subscribers. Red shading shows negative gamma. In negative gamma, we're expecting rapid movement, faster movement through negative gamma, and then slower movement, more support and resistance in positive gamma. Note there is a large positive gamma node right at 5,500. That really is not apparent on the heat map, the gamma heat map, but it is large positive gamma. That there is positive gamma at that level. That's market maker's position. And note down below, let me zoom all the way out. There is a big pocket of positive gamma down around 5,400. And if price moves down further down around that level, I do expect that to act as support. And note the stability index at 1% is quite low. So in these conditions, still looking for higher movement, just based on what's shown in the trace heat map here. All right, let's move on now. So I was looking for a higher, volatility today, and also some potential consolidation after the big move higher last week, or maybe some reversal of that. All right, let's move on. Let's take a look at some setups now, and I'm going to start with the S&P 500. And as always, I'm going to start by taking a look at what options traders have been doing today. And this is the Hero tool, Hedging Impact or Time Options. It's available to Spotgamma subscribers. And what this chart is showing is options trades and market maker hedging activity with the red and purple line. Those are actually candlesticks. And then price for SPX shown with a white line. And the Hero signal, this is for the S&P 500 index. So it is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the S&P 500 index components. That's SPX, SPY, ES futures, and XSP. And a falling Hero line indicates traders taking negative delta positions. They are buying puts and or selling calls. Market makers take the opposite side of those trades, and they have to hedge their delta exposure by selling ES futures. And a rising Hero signal indicates traders are taking positive delta options positions. They're buying calls and or selling puts. Market makers take the opposite side of those trades, and they have to buy ES futures to hedge their delta exposure. So you can see for most of the day, the signal is choppy, but has been trending lower up until about 12:15, something like that, where it seems to have put in a low for the day. All right, so that is one signal that we can take a look at for the S&P 500, and the other is the S&P equity signal. So this signal is typically a little bit smoother than the index signal and tends to do a better job of showing the overall direction. And it has been trending down all day with the S&P 500 equity signal. So this is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the all 500 stocks in the S&P 500 index. With this Hero signal moving lower like this, has been absolutely no reason to even consider taking a long position. All right, so let's zoom in on this. Let's take a look at this short entry right at 9:45, between 9:45 and 9:50. Zoom in just a little bit more. So at the open, the Hero signal overall was pretty flat, kind of chopping up and down. Started to trend lower. And then this large block order comes in right at 9:49. And we'll see that across almost all the Hero charts that we take a look at today. Large block order. And that was some large institution or institutions simultaneously selling calls and buying puts. And that was the kind of the institutional kickoff, I call it. And note also the large bar there. Large red bar. Very clear indication of the reversal in the hedging flow from positive delta to negative delta. And then there's the kicker. That institutional kickoff, and then it was all downhill from there. All right, go back to the equities index signal. We'll zoom in. So the peaks are typically a little bit sharper in the index signal, but there's that peak. Start to move lower. 949, large institutional order, block order, large red bar. All right, so let's go back to Bookmap. Let's take a look at the S&P 500 and take a look at that setup. All right, I'm going to zoom in just a bit here so we can get a closer look at that. So we'll zoom in from about 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock. And we'll take a look at the clues in order flow. So here's a cluster of levels that I talked about earlier. There were 3 SPY levels there. 553, 0 gamma level in the middle of a combo 1 level, important combo level below, and a combo 2 level above, and then the SPX 5550 level in all that mess, that cluster of levels. Let me go ahead and clear these drawings to make that a little bit more clear. Just a little bit. I'm going to darken up the heat map. All right, the heat map in Bookmap is showing a history of the limit orders in the order book. These orders up above were limit sell orders. And again, Bruce talks about this in his supply and demand course. Green volume dots show the volume dots show market buy minus sell. Green volume dots show more buyers than sellers. Buyers were exhausted, found resistance at this cluster of levels. Also, these limit sell orders at 55.80, and there were some limit sell orders coming in below, front running that level. Then aggressive sellers start to come in. That's shown by the magenta volume dots. And price move lower down to that important 550 level. That's the SPY 550 level. Sellers are exhausted. Aggressive buyers start to come in. Take price back up to SPY 552. Again, you can see the sellers in the order book. Kind of a double top there. And then price breaks lower again as traders continue to buy puts and sell calls. And again, the heat map and Bookmap showing clear support and resistance levels with the limit buy orders and sell orders. All right, let's go back to Hero now. Let's shift to puts and calls so we can get a little bit more clarity. I'm going to have to zoom again. So we're on the index signal. So we can see at the exact same time, traders were buying puts and selling calls. Price reversed lower. And again, the choppy signal, especially these peaks, call peaks, that's the orange line. Orange line showing calls, blue line showing puts. Good entry points for shorts. So that was at 1025 and right around 1045, 1050. So let's go back to Bookmap. $10.25, $10.45, $10.50. Additional short entries. All right, back to Hero. And we'll take a look at the equity signal now. And again, while the index signal with the peaks in the index signal helping you to identify the entry points for shorts, on the equity side, it was just indicating direction, which was down. So that is bearish momentum with both the orange line and blue line moving the same direction. In this case, definitely bearish. And note they finally started to level off. The put buyers and call sellers took their foot off the gas right around 11:30, 11:45. All right, let's take a look at Nasdaq now. Let's start with the total signal. So just like the S&P 500, there are two signals that we can take a look at for the Nasdaq. The first is this index signal showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the NDX and QQQ. Note this has been negative all day up until about 12:30. Actually about made a low, looks like around starting to move higher. So there's Nasdaq. Let's take a look at the other signal that we can use for the Nasdaq. That is the Mag 7 signal showing options trades, market maker hedging activity for all 7 stocks known as the Magnificent Seven. That's Apple, Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, and Tesla. Nice peak here, short, right around 950. Again, the large institutional block order showing up. Let's go to Nasdaq. There's that reversal. Buyers are exhausted. Aggressive sellers start to come in, shown by the magenta volume dot, and price moves down all the way to the lower daily expected to move for NQ. And note NQ does often react at the expected moves. And I do post the expected moves for SPX and Discord. I calculate the expected moves for ES and NQ separately, and I leave that up to you to calculate on your own. I've talked about how to do that, and then I post the expected moves for SPX only, but you can calculate the expected moves just the same as SPX. You can calculate them for ES and NQ. All right, so that's the short setup, right around 945, 950, and NQ. And again, both the index signal, Nasdaq index signal, and Mag 7 signal definitely signaling bearish setups. And that seems to have turned around now. All right, let's take a look at some stocks, and then we'll get back to the live market. So first stock I want to take a look at is Apple. Bearish setup this morning. Let's see what options traders are doing. Go to Apple. Let's shift to puts and calls. Go to Apple. Mainly call sellers. Call sellers came in just before 950. Then there's that block order that I was talking about. Large institutional block order, institutional kickoff, selling calls in Apple. Apple moved lower. And there have been more block orders, both bearish and bullish, mostly bearish. Now it looks like some call buyers have come in, starting around 140. All right, so that's Apple. Let's go take a look at, go back to Bookmap. Apple, there's that reversal. Buyers are exhausted. Aggressive sellers come in. Pull back to VWAP, short. Next stock, Amazon. All right, Amazon having a little bit more trouble getting off the floor. So we'll see what options traders have been doing. So there's Apple again. Remember, call buyers started to come in. Let's check Amazon. So Amazon, it was mainly put buyers driving the price lower, and very large block order. Remember, Amazon does report earnings on Thursday after close. Large block order. Put buyers, institutional kickoff. Amazon grinds lower. Now the put line is pretty flat, and it looks like Amazon is finding support at the 185 hedge wall. All right, back to Bookmap. There's that 185 hedge wall. You can see the limit buy orders and at 185 hedge wall. Limit buy orders. Looks like they were consumed right around 12:30. Then again around 1:15. So they came back in, and then they were consumed 1:15. Then came back in again. So more buyers at 185, the 185 hedge wall, and again that's acting as very good support for Amazon. All right, next stock, NVIDIA. Bearish day in NVIDIA also. Let's see what options traders have been doing. Go to NVIDIA. Put buyers and call sellers driving price lower. Note 110 is the hedge wall key gamma strike. We'll see how price reacted at that level. It looks like the put buyers and call sellers have finally taken the foot off the gas. And now NVIDIA trying to recover. And let's go to Bookmap. Pullback entries at or near VWAP. You can see the shift to magenta volume dots there. And NVIDIA finding support around the liquidity at 106. Looks like it did not actually did not trade down to 106. Again, limit buy orders in that at that level, and absorption at that level. Those looks like the majority of those buy orders were not consumed, and they're waiting to be filled. All right, that's NVIDIA. Let's take a look at Tesla. Bearish day in Tesla. Looks like it has traded all the way up to 295 before the open, or right after the open, and then traded down over 20 points, down to around 272. Cumulative volume delta in the subchart, very negative during that move down. Then some aggressive buyers started to come in. You can see the abrupt shift from magenta volume dots to green volume dots. Let's see what options traders are doing. Just like NVIDIA, they were buying puts and selling calls. Let's zoom in on this. Nice flow alert. Signaling significant options activity and a potential shift in hedging flow from positive delta to negative delta right around 950. That's exactly what happened. It's this right here. Note there's no large institutional order in Tesla. Traders start selling calls and buying puts, and price moves lower. Very nice setup there, flow alert, helping to get your attention, signal this potential reversal lower right at 950. Let's go take a look at Bookmap. Again, it looks like buyers are exhausted. Small green volume dot. Aggressive sellers start to come in, and Tesla breaks lower, falling cumulative volume delta. As traders sell calls, buy puts, and also traders sell Tesla shares. All right, so that's Tesla. Last stock that I wanted to take a look at is Robinhood. Another bearish setup today. Let's see what options traders are doing. Go to Robinhood. I'm going to shift to the total signal. I thought it provided more clarity for Robinhood. Zoom in on this. Peak pattern right around 950. There's that large block order, 949, and price reverses lower. Looks like there was a large block order, positive delta, and then right after that, negative delta, even a larger block order. All right, back to Bookmap. Similar reversal to the other stocks that we took a look at. Buyers are exhausted. Aggressive sellers come in as traders start taking negative delta options positions. So all bearish setups today, all bearish opening drives, momentum. All right, let's get back to the indexes now. Start with the S&P 500. All right, so ES has definitely broken above the SPY 547 volatility trigger. That's shown right here. Trend break. Now it looks like finding resistance at SPY 548. Let's zoom in on this a little bit more. And I'm going to scroll down so we can get a look at what's above. So up above, traders have come in with limit sell orders. And that's between the SPY 548 level and mostly at the SPX 5500 volatility trigger. And expected to act as resistance when tested from below. Let's see what options traders are doing. So we'll go back to Hero. We'll go to the S&P 500 index signal first, which has turned lower. Making a nice peak as SPX approaches the 5,500. It's shown as hedge wall there, but for an index, it's the volatility trigger. Let's check the equity signal. We'll zoom in a bit. So now the equity signal so far has made a series of lower highs. A little bit unclear now. Back to the index signal. Zoom in. So it continues to move lower. All right, back to Bookmap. Anybody have any questions? Anything you want me to take a look at? Any stocks? So we know we have a very large potential resistance level above, sellers up above. Yes, making slightly lower highs. Hello, Dilwar. Welcome. Glad you're here. Wants to take a look at IBET, and then IBOM. Welcome. Glad you're here as well. Wants to take a look at QQQ. All right, so let's start with IBET. I don't have IBET and Bookmap, but we can take a look in Hero. So net for the day, traders are taking positive delta positions. All right, so here's IBET. Let's shift to puts and calls. All right, so traders are selling puts. And net for the day, they are selling calls. So it looks like they're taking advantage of high volatility. I haven't checked that, but this is what it looks like. Traders selling puts and buying calls. That's shown by the rising blue line, and the falling orange line are the negative notional value for calls and positive notional value for puts. Overall, IBET down a little bit for the day. Last time I checked, Bitcoin was down. All right, so there's IBET. Go back to the total signal, and IBOM wants to take a look at QQQ. I will tell you, normally I do not look at QQQ. I look at the combined signal of NDX and QQQ, since both have an influence on Nasdaq. So let's take a look, and let's take a look at the notional value here, delta notional. So this is 906. For QQQ, negative 906. And for NDX, it's also negative, about a third of the delta notional of QQQ, but it's still important. So I always look at the Nasdaq combined signal, which you can see combines both QQQ and NDX at about minus 1.2 billion. So minus 900 million, then 300 million gives you minus right around 1.2 billion. So this is the index signal that I take a look at for NASDAQ rather than just QQQ independently. All right, say less. Welcome, glad you're here. Ask, did you do in MNQ futures? Sorry, I'm not sure I understand your question. So the futures, again, are derivatives of NDX. So NQ futures derivative of NDX, and then MNQ, of course, 1/10 of NQ, and a good way to trade Nasdaq, either QQQ or MNQ, since NQ is such a large volatile contract. But there's no hero signal for the MNQ or NQ. So again, for Nasdaq, whether you're trading MNQ or NQ, I look at Nasdaq and Mag 7. All right, let's go back to the S&P 500. Looks like there's a big jump in the hero signal for the index now. Looks like that might have been following price a little bit. Doesn't matter. When traders buy calls and sell puts, market makers take the opposite side of those trades, and they have to buy, in this case, buy futures to hedge their delta exposure. So let's go take a look at Bookmap. All right, so those options traders now following, driving price higher. Looks like some aggressive buyers have come in, shown by the rising cumulative volume delta, that dark blue line, and taking on the liquidity above the at and above the 5,500 volatility trigger. Jose, welcome, glad you're here. Says ES is testing volatility trigger now. Yeah, it is. So we'll watch that. Now some aggressive sellers are coming in. Let's check. I'm going to turn on this market pulse price change indicator. Makes the subchart a little bit noisy when I have iceberg stops and cumulative volume delta. Let me recenter. All right, so break above the volatility trigger, and now that level acting as support. Dilwar asks, so ES has a lot of sell orders above. Yeah, so that's what this, all these levels in the heat map were showing. Those were the limit sell orders. Looks like they remained in the order book. They were consumed. Let's squeeze this down a little bit so we can see what's above. Looks like SPY 549 and VWAP just above that. And Dilwar asks, how can you see iceberg orders or hidden big orders on Bookmap? So you can see sell orders and iceberg orders as they're executed in Bookmap. So with iceberg orders, that's this light blue line on the subchart, and a falling light blue line indicates traders are selling that move higher with iceberg orders. And there's also an on-chart indicator. Let me turn off the market pulse price change just to get rid of some of the noise. There's also an on-chart indicator for stops and icebergs. It'll take just a moment for that to load, but that will confirm. I like to see the sum mode of icebergs here in the subchart, and then see the events with the on-chart indicator. So overall, we know that large traders were fading this move up above the volatility trigger with iceberg orders. That's shown by the on-chart indicator right here. So let's start here with this first peak. So that's 265 contracts executed in 7 different executions. Next up, 116 contracts, 5 separate executions. Next up, 180 contracts, 3 separate executions. Then here, 150, well, that just disappeared. That was 152 contracts, 9 separate executions. If I zoom in, that will, these are aggregated. If I zoom in closer, it will show more of the separate executions. All right, so again, large traders fading that move with iceberg orders. They use to hide their size. Also, it shows the subchart is showing stop orders. That's with the yellow line. And this is generally showing that stop orders, buy stop orders, have been fueling a move higher. Let's go back and check Hero, see what options traders are doing now. Back to Hero. So this move higher was initiated by, looks like a couple of block orders here. You can see the, whoops, all the green bars here, here and here. Now looks like that has leveled off. And these bars in the subchart here, let me show you what that's showing. That is showing net hero value. That's the bottom chart display showing net hero value. All right, so now it looks like buyers coming in again. Few more green bars, but overall it has slowed down from that initial impulse. All right, let's go check Bookmap. All right, so now some consolidation. So there was that initial impulse. Large traders fading that move, and now consolidation after that move. Wayne says, excellent job, thanks. Wayne, thank you for your kind words. You're welcome. All right, my time is up. I want to thank you very much for watching. Thanks for your questions and comments. And remember, a lot of information data coming up in the next couple of days. JOLTS and consumer confidence on Tuesday. GDP, PCE data on Wednesday. And then Meta, Microsoft reporting after the close on Wednesday. So we'll take a look at that on Wednesday. We'll take a look at the reactions to the data and then see how traders are setting up in Meta and Microsoft for earnings reports after the close on Wednesday. All right, everyone, again, thank you very much for watching. Thanks for your questions and comments, and I will see you on Wednesday. Bye.